but the way Windows was installed on it, it like the boot record was different, so it was booting off my hard drive, which did not have Windows installed, and it would like take like 10 minutes to boot.
Okay. Yeah.
And the only solution was basically to reinstall Windows.
Yep.
And I just put it off for like a month, and I just did it like 2 weeks ago.
I heard a friend, well, a guy who used to watch his stream, he just reinstalled Windows on his PC every month, just like a clean boot.
Jesus.
Because you just had like a stick with the clean boot, and just every month reinstall it. It helps you clean out a bunch of stuff that you really don't need, and it really keeps your computer fast because it just slows down over time. And just every month reinstalling it, it's just like a spring cleaning, but like a physical computer clean. Yeah, I know. For me, it's one of those things where you're like, oh, that's actually kind of good to do, and then you just never fucking do it because it's like you know who's got time for that shit.
Yeah, dude. Hell no.
Speaking of
it's
time,
like people like you should also like turn off your computer every day, right? I just
no, mine's on for like months at a time. Yeah, every Windows update's like always idles for like a week plus before I find the time. I mean, yeah, because for streaming and everything, right? Like I use my computer so much.
Yeah, that's true. Fair enough.
And then if I'm not using it, it's like rendering or uploading something, so it's always doing something. All right. Well, since yeah, I thought I was watching a episode, and I was like, this episode is long, and then I'm looking at like it's like another hour and 20 minutes. I'm like, what's going on? But it was apparently a movie that I clicked. I thought it was a TV show. So here we are. I see Adele on my screen. What can I do for you? What's your current situation? Tell me a little bit about you and your
I pretty much just I feel like I have like an idea of like what to do next, but I just wanted to make sure that I'm like, you know, progressing in the right ways, and I understand the systems that I think I understand, and that kind of thing.
Sure. And you say the right ways,
sort of
like the way that fits with your goals, right? With what you want to achieve.
Yeah,
for sure.
And like I think I understand. Like for example, like so this is like a little bit of backstory. I played Maple. The first time I played it was when Iran came out, or Aaron or whatever. Like when that class was released is the first time I played MapleStory.
Okay.
So like way back fucking when. And then I never got ever to like third job, and then I got to fourth job for the first time when Demon Slayer came out. And then I stopped playing, and then Reboot came out, and I mained a Xenon until level 150, and I stopped playing after that.
Yeah, maining Xenon will do that to you. Yeah. No, just kidding.
And that was when Ghost Exorcist badge was still available.
Sure. Yeah. GSEs. Yeah.
And then I stopped playing again, and then I started playing again in Destiny, and I burned this Adele, and then 2 other classes, and now I'm like actually playing.
Okay. So since you have played in all of those different like eras, basically, would you say this is a decent one?
I mean, when Reboot came out, that was like the first time I really started playing, because I didn't like the whole pay-to-win aspect of the game. And it felt like Reboot had a lot of simpler mechanics. Like I didn't understand scrolling at all, and Reboot was just like Star Force, and that's it.
Yeah, they simplified it a little bit now because everything is just like reduced to spell traces, right? And basically you have one unit of spell traces, and then you use a certain amount of spell traces to buy other scrolls. But there's still scrolls outside that you can do, and then there's like resetting, and there's protecting, and it's just too much. I prefer just give me final damage and let me not have to deal with any of that stuff.
Before I played Xenon, I had never beaten Zakun, for example.
Okay, yeah.
So
I mean, he was a big
definitely
baddie.
Wasn't really. I was just like log on like once every like year, like grind a character out for 20 levels and get bored and get off and stop playing.
Okay.
But I always liked the aesthetic, and like the gameplay was actually pretty fun. So with Destiny, I felt like I really like got into the game, and once I hit 5th job and started like learning how the game works, I like the fun like aspect went way up.
Okay, yeah, because there is like a terms of on the surface, it's kind of, it's like a chibi, looks like a kid's game, but if you treat it like that, you're very quickly run into walls and feel like I'm so weak. But you have to kind of start digging deeper under the surface and figure out like where does damage come from and how do I progress from A to B to kind of feel like your time keeps being worth being put into the game, because otherwise you're just not going anywhere, right? Yeah.
One thing I noticed too is that there's so much information that for a new player it's like super daunting. Like what the hell do I do? So I'm like technically a new player because this account is like super like weak, I guess would be the best way to put it, when I started playing in Destiny. But like having played the game before, I had some idea of like what to do and like what link skills were and that kind of thing. So I had an idea of like where to get my footing. And just play whatever's fun. Don't prioritize what's the best class and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I would always say like the best class is the one that you have the most fun playing. Ultimately, I feel pretty much every class, I would say every class in the game is viable. The one that you look forward to playing, have fun spending time on, is the one you're going to get furthest on, and that's where you're going to get the most, like the best gameplay out of, sure. I would say. Yeah, you could play a class that's like 5% final damage, better damage output, but if you don't enjoy that character, you're never going to get to the point where that starts to matter. Because you're not going to either enjoy it, you're not going to be progressing, you're going to burn yourself out, something like that.
Kadena supposedly one of like the strongest classes in the game, right? But I can't play that class for shit because there's too many buttons to press.
Well, too many buttons, but also like the order and the tempo are super important, right? And if you just don't do that properly, you're going to get like 30% of the damage out of it, and then you're just going to feel like you're wasting your time. This is not fun, for me. So I'm looking for fun always. Like, how can we look at what's fun for you? How can we get there in a fun way that is reasonable for you with the amount of time that you have available to play the game? And if you have a sort of like a plan, we can start with that. Kind of see like where do you want to go? What's your current thought on going there? And I guess in tandem with that, I would ask you like to which extent are you familiar with kind of what I do with my sessions and with my commands and everything, so I know what to go over.
I know basically nothing about the commands. I'm one of those like lurk viewers for the most part. Like I just watch you grind and then.
I see. I don't do much of that, but like dailies and stuff.
I mean, like grind in terms of like progressing
the game. Yeah. Okay. Like, grind the game. Yeah.
Usually I'm at work, so
I see.
I'm just like I have you on the side while I'm doing whatever I'm doing at work.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't really have a lot of time to play. That's one of the limiting factors for me. So I usually log in and do the dailies on the Adele and then get off, and that's usually the session for the day.
Okay, so that's like an hour or less a day, and then maybe a little bit more on weekends, something like that.
So like Sunday is usually the day I get to play the most.
Okay.
So like Sunday is the day I'll do all the bosses. I've already done all the bosses. Like yesterday, and I did some this morning. Actually, on that note, since I sent you the album, I got my Legion of 3000.
Okay, congrats. 3000 is pretty big, right? Bigger grid, way more characters in there. Yeah. Okay. So I usually work a lot with commands, but basically what happened is I like to be informative, help people out who were struggling. And way back in the day, what I started noticing is that people who were in the stream a lot started kind of getting bored that I'm always explaining the same thing over and over and over. And they're kind of like, we want like new content too, we're here also. So what I started doing was making commands that I could basically, if somebody had a certain question and I felt like it was adequately answered by a command, I would put commands in the chat, and then basically they would get like 90 to 95% of their questions answered immediately just by reading that through. And then whatever was the follow-up question was usually highly exceptional, or just a good inside question, something that I overlooked. So either I could update my command, or I could talk about something that wasn't really talked about before. So
that explains why you have like 200 commands.
Yeah, and it just kept piling on, and now I have over 200 of them, which, exactly like you said, could be very daunting for a new person. So I would say definitely the most important ones that I use a lot is the progression one and the dailies one. I feel like these highlight very well. Basically, I made a video on this on like where does damage come from, because back in the day it was just damage range, or if you were a Night Lord, it was always like attack claw, or like that was like what everyone was yelling at you, range. But now damage range doesn't really matter all that much, and the further you go into the game, the more you notice that the most important stats for your damage are sources of final damage that are not shown in your damage range. Is critical rate, IED, critical damage, boss damage. These numbers are all not shown in your damage range, which means that you can see a nice number there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that much to what your actual damage output is. And it's also varies greatly between classes, right? Like if you were talking about a Cadena before, once a Cadena's got all their buffs built up, their visual damage range could go over 1 billion, unironically, right, when they're doing Culvert and trying to maximize their damage. But that doesn't mean that if you have another class with 1 billion damage that you'll be putting out the same damage. You might be putting out way more or way less. So this is why that stat has lost a lot of value, which is weird because they actually made it take up double the space now, and it's in your detailed and in your regular character stats, whereas your level isn't in there at all, which is weird, because I would have to ask you now, what is your level? But you have the character info, right? But in your character stats, level isn't even in there. Your fame is in there, you know, super important stat, but your level isn't. And for reboot specifically, level is a way more important metric because reboot versus non-reboot has a huge penalty of level difference, right? So if you're trying to attack bosses above your level, you get a way harsher penalty for level, and this is especially important for bossing later on. You might meet the requirements, you might have okay funding, but if you are just too many levels below the boss, so for example, when you get to level 235, so next level, you get into Asphera, right? And then you unlock, with the storyline, you unlock Will. But Will himself is a level 250 boss. So if you were to have just all of your metrics, kind of like the progression grid says here, all of your metrics like roughly in the stage where you would want them, so you'd be like nearing the end of the mid-game here, and you'd be approaching all of these metrics, you still, just from attacking Will as level 235, you would get an 87.5% final damage reduction, which, you know, means you're just hitting him with a wet pool noodle, right? Like, you can have all the damage in the world, just nothing is getting through just because of the level difference. And that's why I, you know, propose to have level be like the main metric that kind of determines how strong you are. But underlying with that is that all of these other stats are met, right? There's no just one number. Some people like to use dojo as a marker. That, again, that gives you some info, but some characters will just inherently do better at dojo than others because of their kit. And some people like to use main stat, which again is also a decent marker, and it's definitely high up there. But the lower that number is, the more all of the other stats can overpower the difference, right? I could build you a 5k stat character that can solo CRA, or I can build you a 25k stat character that cannot solo CRA, just because of how much IED I could give you, for example, right? If you understand how those numbers work, if your ID is too low, you just won't do any damage, right? You just hit once. And so you could technically build someone with 48k stat and with like 10% IED, and you just wouldn't deal damage to the boss. But I could give you 4k stat, I could max out your nodes, right? Go way over on all of these metrics here, give you like a tier 7 flame on your weapon, anything that doesn't show up in your stat, and then you'd be way stronger than a 5k. So again, it's predictive, but the higher you go, the more predictive it is, right? You won't expect someone with 70k stat to be running around with like 10% IED, because that wouldn't make any sense, right? Someone who's that far into the game, understands the systems, so then it becomes more predictive. So I like to use the level as a predictor, mainly because of the level difference, and based on that, I basically have made, this is basically like the content in order that I think it shows up, in order in which I think it's a good idea to start trying it. It's got the soul shards here. That's something, you know, to min-max your weapon later. And the bossing experience, and that talks about, I think, how important it is to learn that boss so that you can take what you learn in those mechanics and that expertise with you to the next boss fight and have an easier time fighting the next boss. So when I talk about carries and stuff like that, I'm usually okay with people getting carried on bosses that just have irrelevant here, because you're not really missing out on any experience or whatsoever. But as soon as it has slightly relevant or very relevant, I would advise you to practice the boss and to try to do it with a party of your peers so that you can take that experience with you. Otherwise, you're just building up that threshold of how much more difficult that next boss is going to be, and you're kind of setting yourself up to getting carried forever. And that then basically, so that these levels here synchronize with these. As long as for your level, you're in the ballpark for all of these metrics, you will be able to commit to this content around the level that you see here, and be able to attack that content. So I've highlighted here in blue the content that I think is worth doing around your level, with some extra explanation here on the side. And then here you have, for example, like links to the wiki page, so you can kind of like see the drops, see some of the mechanics, you know, if you want some extra information, stuff like that. It's mentioned here if it's weekly. There's a P here if there's pre-quests. Those are usually shared between account now. There's a few exceptions. It's like Princess No, I think, is one of the biggest exceptions. Other than that, yeah, and like CRA, I guess you have to get those 5 clears, right, on every character. But other than that, those are saved. So this would kind of gradually bring you into, right? So we would be checking basically during the session, like kind of seeing, are you able to roughly do the content around this level? If it's your first main, you're probably a little bit on the early side, right? If you have a big legion already, you have a lot of characters, a lot of experience, you're probably a little bit on the higher side. And there's a little bit of class difference as well. But it's like a general ballpark to see like what kind of content can I expect it to be challenging, what should be decently doable, and what kind of metrics am I looking for. And then based on those metrics, if you can see a big disparity between where you're now and where your stat is, that's probably where, pound for pound, investing your time, you'll most likely get the most efficient growth at this time. And usually the only exception there is if there's a cube sale soon, you might go a little bit overboard on cubing, so that means that your stat might be a little bit higher comparatively. And if there's a big Star Force sale, like a shiny Star Force or a 5, 10, 15 event, you might temporarily go a little bit over on the Star Force, so then this metric might be a little bit higher than the rest. But as always, it's about a balance between all of these things. So if there's something you enjoy more, some people really like doing Legion, for example, they might go for 4, 5, 6k Legion before their main character is at your level. But of course, with Hyperburn, the other thing is also your level might be a little bit over, right? So just because you leveled 3 times the speed or a little bit more than 3 times the speed, that might also mean that therefore all of these other metrics couldn't really keep up realistically, especially if it's your first character. So if you're quite under on these metrics on where you would expect to be like late mid game, that's probably normal if it's your first character in Hyperburn, because the game wasn't really designed for you to level that quickly. So a lot of information, but does all of that, like how that's connected, does that all make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And if you see these metrics here, are there any metrics where you're thinking like, I'm not 100% sure on these, on how do I check that? Where do I go to? Because surprise, all of them have their own command.
I don't really know how flames work at all.
Sure. Okay.
Other than that, everything else is like, I'm there, I guess.
Yeah. Were you around where nebulites were a thing?
I mean, I was around, but I didn't like engage with that content at all.
Yeah, it was really simple. They were just like little rocks. They had different tiers. You could like fuse them, but you basically just put a little rock in an item and you got a little bit of bonus stats. Basically, Flames is that on steroids, where you just roll a bunch of stats on an item. But because of the volatility of like the types of rolls that can come out, and some items not existing in Korea and getting different types of rolls, what we basically worked out is a flame score, is what you can see here, which is just like a score that you give to the flame of an item, so just the green number part, right? That just lets you kind of know if you're in the ballpark of where it makes sense efficiency-wise. It just takes into account how reasonable it is to get a certain amount of value from your flame, how much it would cost, how prevalent flames are, and how important flames are in balance to the other sources of upgrade, so specifically cubing and star forcing. So in the beginning, it's not very important at all. It's mostly important to get a decent flame on your weapon, because there you can get weapon attack, big chunks of weapon attack, which scale very well with your damage. So that's mostly important. And then it's mostly just items with what we call flame advantage. So that's typically the items that drop from bosses. Basically, when it comes to like, if you're just getting like the mainstream normal attacks, really the only non-advantage items that you should be worrying about is Sweetwater stuff and Aldegolic stuff, basically. So those will just not get, those don't have flame advantage. So every kind of roll, to get into the details, basically it rolls up to 4 stats, and then it rolls within a tier, and the tier depends on the quality of the flame. So you have the powerful and the eternal. Eternal is 1 higher on the lower end and 1 higher on the upper end, so you have just on average better outcomes, but they're more rare, right? So typically, if you're looking at like getting a good flame, typically 1 eternal flame is worth about 3 powerful flames. So you'll see that as well in the prices and in the event shops. Typically it's about a 3-to-1 value there. You know, if you could choose, of course, do you get 1 eternal or 3 powerful, you would always choose 3 powerful, because, you know, if 1 roll, the standard deviation is way wider, right, on getting like a shitty roll. If you can do 3 rolls, it's always more likely that at least one of those hits. But if the chance is like, do you want like 1,000 eternals or 3,000 powerfuls, you probably want 1,000 eternals, because there the chance of like one of those hitting like really high tiers that the powerful cannot even hit, there becomes higher. So like the higher you go, the more the value goes towards the eternal. But on the lower end, you just want mass rolling. So in the past, a lot of flames would drop from bosses. That's not really the case anymore. So flaming has really taken a back seat towards, or compared to flame cubing and star forcing. So it's more like,
yeah, sure. I remember when I was playing during Destiny, they were still dropping at that point. And I was use like a calculator to see like, is this flame good? I don't know. I will put in the calculator, good. All right, keep it, and then keep going from there. And now I don't have any flames like at all. I like don't even look at that number anymore.
Yeah, it's just about prioritizing. So as long as your weapon has a good flame and your like your CRA gear, and then after that your Abso stuff, and after that your arcane stuff, as long as those have like okay flames, and maybe your cup, right? That's a flame advantage item. Then as long as they don't have like absolute trash flames, then you're good, and then you don't really have to worry. It's more like one of those systems where you just like slowly bring them up as you get flames, and you probably at all times have one item that has a garbage flame on it because you're just actively working on it until it kind of works its way up to where it's on par or above all the other items you have. And then whatever is the worst item at that point becomes your target to destroy the flame, basically, until you luck into something nice. And that's basically the flame system. I would say it's once you have all of your equips probably at like 20 or 21 stars, and you have, like 2.5 line to 3 line, everything on the potential, that you really start spending actively money on flames and trying to reroll really good things. So with the exception of, I would say, weapons and items that you're going to transpose. Because once you transpose, transposing is always into Sweetwater stuff, right? And like I said, Sweetwater stuff does not have flame advantage. So if you were to flame it after transposing, you would get a non-flame advantage outcome, which will be 99.99% of the time worse significantly than pre-transpose, because transposing has the quality of bringing the flame with the item in transposing, and the items that we transpose have flame advantage. So the outcome, that's why we transpose, is that you end up with a flame advantage flame on a non-flame advantage item. That's the only way you can do that in the game. So basically you're flaming to be future-proof, right? So you're going a little bit above where you would for the item, so that after you're done, because you can never reflame it, so that you can, kind of like retire on that flame. So those, I would say, so transposing and weapon is the only things where you could really, I would say, really maybe buy flames, just and only if there's pressure on, trying to transpose. Maybe there's a 15 event coming up, and you want to make sure that you can upgrade the transposed item and not the source item is already ready. So you want to start transposing, which means you need a good flame first. That's the only time I would say I would buy flames, other than just, end game. You're trying to get like some crazy 155 plus flame on Arcane Umber gear or something like that.
Is it worth it to go for like, I mean, obviously the answer is kind of yes, but the Commerci items, like, because I haven't done a single Commerci since I've never done it, and I kind of don't want to do it, but I don't know, like,
yeah, many people,
I don't want to invest the time into it.
Sure, many people don't want to do it. If you have like a limited amount of dailies, it's okay, a limited amount of time to play daily, I would say it's definitely okay for you to just make your own call on that and see if you actually want to do that. The thing is that the real difference there is people get kind of upset, I would say rightfully so, that there's a bunch of systems in this game that are just fully RNG, and there's no pity system.
To say thank you for the progression videos on YouTube that got me back into playing,
like for boss drops and such.
Yeah, exactly. And the systems that do have it, like Gollux and Commerci, right, where you can buy them with the coins, although only half the items you have to buy with the coins, the other half you can get as a drop. Those systems kind of get taken for granted. If that got taken away, I think people would be way more upset about those systems. The options are basically like, do you do Sweetwater, all of the stuff, get coins, and then have a guaranteed amount of time where then you can buy the accessories, or do you do the RNG stuff and then hopefully get the drops and then get something that might be as good or almost as good, or in some situations a little bit better, but it's purely RNG, right? Some people are like, well, the other ones are slightly better anyway, so I'm just going to go for those. So that means that Commerci is bad. I would say, sure, but if you don't get the drops, you could have do you get guaranteed drops in like a few weeks, or do you hopefully get one in a month, and if you don't, you're boned, and then you wasted all your time, and you could have been doing Commerci and you would have had the drop already, right? So it kind of depends on your
Right.
level of risk aversiveness versus how you spend your time. If you just don't have the time to do it, you can do some quick dailies in Commerci and kind of just, you know, not deal too much with the min-maxing. Just do like the very first voyage and get some dineros. You can build up for the long term, which takes a little bit more time investment early on, but then could get you to the point where you can do all your dailies in just 7 minutes and get 48 dineros from that. But it takes a little while to set up to get to that point. But yeah, then you can just print dineros, right? If you make 48 a day, you can get like an accessory every week, which is way more than you'll get on average just on RNG, even with high drop rate. So that's kind of, in that sense, it's up to you. I advise Commerci just because of its guarantee. Even if you're just going to go for one of each of the accessories just to have them, and then later on you can decide, okay, I'm getting a Papulatus mark maybe if I'm lucky. For, you know, some people get that in a month, some people get that in 2 years. heavy RNG there. Once you get that, you can decide like, oh, I'm going to push harder on this, or you know, you do normal ping bean every day and you do chaos ping bean once a week, and if you get one of the ping bean marks, you can say, I'm just going to upgrade this. It stays in the boss accessory set. It has flame advantage. So by that metric, and it can go up to, you know, 17 and even above, up to 20 Star Force. So it's a very good alternative to the monocle, and the monocle doesn't have a set bonus, so it doesn't have flame advantage, so it's a huge benefit there. You can do that for sure, but if you don't have one, you know, if you try to do two things at once, you increase your chances that one of them hits, right? And then when one of them hits, you can stop the other one. But it's kind of up to you ultimately. Yeah, a lot of people don't like the daily, so I understand.
The only issue is that like if you do two things at once, if you're doing both to their full, like, I guess I don't know what the word is, but if you're doing them both like as much as you can, that's a lot of time you spend, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Versus doing one or the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's eventually what the game wants you to do, right? The game will always be set towards, oh, there's like a very small chance for these drops. If you go with a full party, you know, there's shared drops, so you have to share them with 4, 5, 6 people. So, you know, eventually the game tries to push you towards doing all the content every single day on every character, all solo, right? Because otherwise you don't have a realistic chance of actually getting the items and making upgrades anymore. And that gets more and more extreme the further you go. But in the end, it's totally up to you. Either way works. You can get the drop from normal ping bean, but you'll have to probably work on drop rate before you see any kind of chance there. Otherwise, your odds are really bad, I would say. But yeah, just remember, like in the beginning, going for your first accessory and stuff, doing Commerci, that's always going to feel bad. That's going to be the slowest it's ever been, right? And it's only going to get faster, especially if you build up your boat. So I got exclamation mark Commerci, but basically it talks about like which voyages you can do just in the short term, just to be like, I'm going to get one of each accessory and then get out. That's pretty fast. Or the slower approach of building up your boat first, which take a while, and custom dineros. But then once you have it, basically if you think that eventually you're going to go past like 19 stars, going to get for high Star Force accessories, then that's the way to go, because you'll have just so many backups that'll save you a lot of money, right? You won't have to spend all that money on safeguarding, because you can just brute force your way through without safeguarding, because you'll have the backups. So in the long term, that saves you more money than how much money you can make training and boss mules and that kind of stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah. Just your options. You know, I'm never telling anyone what to do exactly.
Yeah.
I'm just like, these are your options, and depending on how far you're going to think you're going to go and how much you think you're going to play, this will probably make the most sense for you, you know.
I mean, I do eventually want to
Scardor
like tackle all the endgame content at some point, you know, like Black Mage and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm taking it easy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it might take you, you know, well, depending on how much you play, it's probably going to be a year plus, right? But it might be 3 years if you play this. Not much on grinding myself. The totems were at least a good motivator for me, but now that those are gone, my training wheels are off, so I'm falling both sides. Yeah. No, I feel that. Yeah, if you do want to eventually go for that, I would definitely advise to just build up Commerci, because it could be one of those things where, and don't think it's a huge time sink. It'll definitely build up over time. Might feel like it, but once you've got that boat, once you get that dreadnought unlocked, and you can just slam the solo voyages, like I said, it's like theoretically 6, but realistically probably 7 to 8 minutes a day just doing your dailies there. There's going to be a huge amount of dineros that then comes rolling in. So, I would say that's still worth it. But some people, they have hookups, they have a guild, they get carried everywhere, so they can get the items with higher degree of likelihood faster. So it depends on how you're gonna play.
True.
Yeah.
I'm also like one of those people that's like, I don't want to get carried.
Mm-hmm.
I want to like actually go through the struggle runs and to get all my shit myself.
Yeah, then it would make more sense to go to Commerci, because then you can get that base damage more reliably. That will help you carry your own weight and get into those runs where those drops that would be an upgrade are even possible to get. And you'd be getting there with more people who would all want the drop, so the chance of you getting that primary drop would also decrease there. So it would just make more sense. That's kind of how the game is designed, Like, even though items might be a lower level, if you can only access them from a boss that you can only deal damage to at a way higher level, it doesn't really make sense to wait for that, right?
Fair enough.
Yeah, did it make sense? Yeah, okay.
I mean, how long does it take to do, in the beginning, how long does it take to do one Commerci run?
So the thing in the beginning is that you try to just always do whatever voyages take you the furthest and which take the longest, because the amount of EXP you get for your boat per energy goes up like a lot. So you can level up your boat, get to the level 2 boat. That's pretty quick. I think that's probably less than a week, or maybe a little bit more than a week. But the main thing is getting from the level 2 from the sailboat to the dreadnought. That's going to take a while. I don't know exactly, but that might be a month plus. It's probably a month plus. But then once you have the dreadnought costs quite a bit of dineros as well. So you can't really buy anything until you make your first upgrade, because if you do, you'll slow down leveling up your boat. You can buy, I believe, one item in between getting from level 2 to level 3 boat, just because of how long it takes. And that upgrade itself costs like 500 dineros as well. But then, yeah, like I said, once you've got the dreadnought, you've also got Commerci PQ, right? Which is an extra PQ you can do that doesn't require any dineros. And you can do that starting day 2. And that usually gives you somewhere between, between 16 and 20 dineros a day extra as well. So that, that all adds up. It's not a huge investment. It's just timely. But then once you have it, you can really start printing dinero. So for the long term, I would advise it. 48 plus 21 is 69. Nice. Yeah, I think that's the max number you can get. Yeah, I think you can get around 69 a day. Yeah. And the accessories are, is it 250, 300, 350, something like that. So
Also, Galax takes fucking forever.
Yeah. But it's also just really, really good, like
especially with like if you like I'm doing hard Galax, like solo, and if you fail your run, that's it.
One entry, that's no practice mode. Yeah, it's the Wild West in there. Yeah. Definitely.
I usually I do like the hard, like all the buffs, just to make sure I can clear the first time.
Right. You got guild skills and stuff like that?
I am in a guild with like the 30 magic attack and attack skill. I really don't want to do flag race and culvert, so I joined a guild that says you don't have to do it.
Okay. Yeah, but then you're also not going to have as many guild points probably.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the guild's like a little more scuffed because of that.
Yeah.
I knew that going into it, so
No, yeah, that's which you which sees what you get there, yeah.
But because I have so little, I don't want to do all these dailies, weeklies every single week. I don't want to feel like I have to do these things. That's why I'm minimum commitment.
Yeah. No, that's fine, yeah.
It's the same reason I'm hesitant to do Commerci, and also during the dailies for all the Arcane River stuff, I don't do any of the Randheim defense and the Choo-Choo Island. I don't do any of the extra stuff, just the quest. And
some of those definitely are. Some of those are lower value in time per symbols, but the beautiful thing about those symbol dailies is that once you unlock a bunch of extra areas, you get to speed up the previous ones, and their value goes up quite a bit. So I would say especially once you're at level, so we're 210, and then 220, 225, 230. Yeah, so once you're 230 plus, which you are, I would definitely advise to just check out the Hungry Muto PQ, because if you can probably do that on hard mode pretty quickly. I assume probably like within 3 minutes, and that would give you just doing at one time will give you 15 symbols. So the value per your time spent there will significantly go up as you can skip. And as you get stronger, you can also do the content faster. You have you unlock more symbols, so your base arcane power goes up a lot. So that base content becomes a lot easier. So for Chuchu PQ, I would definitely suggest to look into that, because as you get better at that, you'll also be able to do it faster. And like I said, probably 2-3 minutes will get you 15 symbols there, and that's that arcane power becomes tremendously important once you go further because of the arcane power bonus damage, right? That's what I just mentioned here. You know about those intervals and everything?
Yeah, once you get like 150%, you do like 2.5 times damage or something like that.
Yeah, so there's 10, 30, and 50%, which is just 10% more final damage, 30% more final damage, 50% more final damage, yeah. But the higher you go, the higher the base requirement becomes, so the higher that chunk of 10, 30, and 50 becomes. Like once you get into a Sphera, the spiders in there, for example, have 600 arcane power requirement, so that means to get 1.5, you need 900. And that starts, you've just met that 600, but you're basically only going to do base damage once you get into a Sphera now. Once you get there, or you get like one symbol, right? So you get to 630, maybe get a few more levels, but you're very far away from that 900. You need 660 would be like the first 10%, but since you're losing that final damage, there's going to be a lot more pressure on all of your other metrics to be able to keep up with that damage. So leveling up, especially those early symbols, so specifically Vanishing Journey and Chuchu, those are leveling at a pretty high, pretty decent speed there. Those will become more and more important to help you support being able to maintain your progress and your leveling, because all of these things are compounding factors, and if one of those metrics falls down very far behind where you want it to be, everything else has to push way harder to keep up. And if you have to push harder in a system that is mentioned here, that means you're pushing into areas of lower efficiency, which means for you more time spent for less return. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm not telling you like you have to do all of this, but if you already have limited time, I would always still advise like whatever is most fun for you, spend most time there. But the further you go, you will need to do a little bit more of the things that you might necessarily not like, just so that you can keep doing the things that you do like, basically. And everyone has their breaking point there, so you decide how far you go there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Okay, so you do eventually want to go like into the end game. You want to see all of the content in the game, and from what you described on how you play, that might be just like years after the content comes out, right? Once access to it is increased a lot, as it has been, right? They've added a lot of symbol dailies to get your arcane power up faster. They've added new areas. They've added drop rate. They've added droplets being able to be bought from the shop. All that, yeah.
On that note. It's actually going to get easier for me to do, because they're changing the symbol dailies to be weeklies.
Yeah, so the ones that are like the extra puzzles, probably the ones that you're skipping the most now, are going to become weeklies. They're changing a little bit on how much you're getting. I think the one that's mostly getting a bit of a nerf is Spirit Savior. That's actually going to be fewer symbols per week. But again, in symbols per time, it's going to go up greatly. So for someone like you with limited time to play, it's definitely going to become way more valuable to do those, because then, you wouldn't get like 15 symbols for those 2 to 3 minutes, but you'll get like a week's worth. So you get like 105 symbols, roughly, for like 2 to 3 minutes of time, just once a week.
That would open up like doing daily like Commerci and stuff like that.
So that's not going to be included in that, because Commerci doesn't exist in Korea, and that's partially why that content.
But what I'm saying is not having to.
Oh yes, yeah, for sure, yeah.
Every day, yeah, gives me time to do the Commerci.
Exactly, yeah, you're right.
Because my schedule is not going to change anytime soon, so it's going to be like I literally only have like the 2 hours. Like I'm only awake 2 hours before I have to go to sleep for work the next day.
Yeah, so. Okay, yeah, that's a pretty tight schedule to get any kind of MapleStory progress in. Yeah, I would say though that symbol dailies are very high priority if you're gonna do some stuff daily. Again, you might not feel it quite yet, but it's one of those things, and this is how computer games are built up. Once you feel it, it means that you've already like been losing ground on it, right? It's like once you're feeling hungry, it's because typically we like eat because so you don't get hungry. But if you're already hungry, then you're too late to eat, right? So you should have eaten a while ago, kind of thing. So it's like once you start feeling that you can't kill the monsters anymore and you need to work on your arcane power, probably means that you should have been doing dailies like the last month so that you would have not hit this point, right? So,
Right.
But again, that's how the game is built. That's how they want you to play. So as long as you're aware of that, you know, you make the the decision, the conscious decision whether you want to do that or not, whether you want to run that rat race. But that's the way the game is built to kind of funnel you into playing 10 minutes every day, playing an hour every day. Yeah.
It's just comparing because now that I've gotten to Morass and like I like cleared all of Morass like no problem because I was already at the arcane power requirement pretty much. And that, but like I remember when I burned the Adele to 200 and like raced all the way to 220 with all the experience bonuses they had during Destiny. Like doing Latchlina was an absolute grind because I didn't have the arcane power requirements to kill the monsters. I was doing like 75% damage or whatever it is.
Yep.
And that was awful.
Yeah, and higher you go. Well, they already helped quite a bit with getting that higher level symbol, right? For every area, you got like a level 5 symbol, I believe.
And it still wasn't enough.
Yeah, and it still wasn't enough, right? Because, and that goes back to this, is because even though you have this level, your metrics aren't tracking because you're leveling too quickly. So you're literally just outpacing the game. Why? Because a lot of the game's progress is capped on a daily contribution, and you just don't have that many days played yet. So you physically can't make up for that stuff. Or, you know, it'd have to be your 4th or 5th character, and somebody throws like 6,000 nodes at it and immediately maxes out all your boost nodes. Then all of that final damage can overcome that penalty in the other areas, and then you can keep, you know, sending away. That's why you have those videos of like, oh, I got to level 200 in like 45 minutes. That's why you get those videos, but that's not what people have access to. And the people who do have access to that, they're probably wasting their resources on getting a character to 200 that quickly because you probably didn't even need that 200, right? So it's all kind of smoke and mirrors on how you get there. But in general, this would be like my main thing is like this content is not what you have to do, but is what I would advise looking into. And then if it gives you progress towards where you want to go, keep doing it. And if you have the time for it, if you don't have the time for it, you really, really dislike it, and you don't think it is that important for you on where you want to go, then don't do it, right? By all means. But this is just the content I would check out. And then these are like the general stats, and it's probably what we'll look at as well to see, to compare to where you're at and to see where can you make the biggest gains right now. And so what would I advise to do in the midterm, short term, and long term. So you said you're okay with the systems in general, except for flames, right? There's also exclamation mark flames where I go like way deeper into all the numbers, but basically it's like calculate your flame score, try to compare it to the numbers that are here in the grid. Is it roughly within the metric that's mentioned here? Then cool. If it's not, then it can be your next project. If you get them from bosses or from events, throw them on there. Once they start getting, approaching these numbers, then we'll start working on the next item. We got a flame calculator as well, where you can put in the values. You can calculate the scores, and you can store them as well, so that you can kind of just see where my item's at. So we could do a quick example. So not the weapon, right? Weapons different. Rings don't have flame scores. These guys don't have flame advantage. This guy does. So typically it just go to CRA, right? If you were a luck class, then these would be really nice pants, obviously, but you know that. So we could do the CRA pieces, for example. So the hat has 40 strength and 6 attack. Nothing else gives you damage. So typically, if you're progressing pretty slowly, you can pick the late game option. For CRA, that's probably fine. So we have 40 strength, no dex, 6 attack, no all stat. You can calculate 64. So if you want to, you can do like CRA hat, save, and it'll save that score right here. And then we can do the next one, which is the top is 40, no dex, and 6 all. So that would be 40, 6. And then we can do CRA top, save, boom. So you can see this one is significantly higher than that, right? Not just a little bit, but quite a bit. And then the pants are 20, no dex, no attack, and 5. So this way, just because it's put into one number, you can compare apples to apples, right? Instead of apples to oranges.
Right.
So now you can see that the pants and the hat are actually really close. And the CRA top is by far better. Now you can check the progression grid. You can see close to 240. You're looking at the lower end of the flame advantage. That's where like the cup is and the CRA stuff is. And then the higher is like Absolab and stuff like that. The reason that there's a disparity is because even though you get the same quality of flame, the same rarity of the flame, the same value of the flame, the stats that you get per, as the level of the equip goes up, the same tier of outcome gives a slightly higher number of stat. So the more you get different levels of gear, the more the outcome, even if it's the same cost, is going to end up being a better flame. So this is why higher level equips within the same category of advantage are a higher priority to flame, because you get more bang for your buck. So here the difference gets even bigger, because this is where you start getting arcane stuff, right? And it's level 200. Like if you want to get the same flame score on a cup that's level 140 versus on an arcane gear that's level 200, you're just going to be spending way more money, which doesn't make any sense because you're getting the same amount of stat, the same amount of real damage. So that's why there's a range for the numbers here. So now you can see, like, if you do get flames, well, what else would be in the range, right? The cup. So the cup is 56 and 6, which we can already kind of feel coming that's pretty good, right? So we do like pink cup.
The cup is easy to get because it's like a, not guaranteed, but basically guaranteed drop from Pink Bean.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
you can also. Yep. But you see, this one is 107, right? So if you're looking here,
right,
like the cup is like way above where you want it. It's already like higher than like a late game cup flame, right? So the cup is like really good for long term. But if you see like you're trying to get around 85 near the end of the stage for CRA stuff, you see that the top is already good too. But the pants and the CRA hat both can have some, definitely have some way to go. So I would just look at the terms of progress, just, kind of like the flame score here, 85 minus what you already have. So this has got like 22.5 potential. This has got like 21 potential. So this has slightly higher potential. And then that 20 would also be the same number I'd look at here. So this is starting at 20. So if you have a non-advantage item, like a superior item, or a Golix item with no flame on it, that would roughly, I would categorize that as around the same amount of progress it can make as one of these pieces. So as soon as you hit anything there, then the CRA would come into play as like, okay, I'm going to be using this.
So how do you get the reflaming items now?
The reflaming items?
Yeah, like where do you, like the actual like item that you use on the CRA piece?
So the powerful flames and eternal flames.
Yeah.
So most of that, so in the beginning, just whatever you get from bosses is good enough. It's mostly going to be weekly boss and sometimes elites when you kill them when training. So it's going to be very minimal. You can buy them later. So there's Legion shop has them. But Legion coins in the beginning you want to usually use towards increasing your Legion. So buying your Legion rank and and towards towards buying coupons, right, to keep leveling fast, that kind of stuff. So you usually don't want to buy them there just yet. The extra income is most likely is going to come from event shops. Mostly the priority for you from event shops is going to be nodes, but like a high priority. Specifically the normal nodes, usually not the EXP nodes, because those are just very expensive. Sometimes you'll see normal nodes at like 70 coins, EXP nodes at 1500. That is just not quite worth it early on in the game. Not until you get to end game, I would say, are those worth buying. It's really once you're doing, those huge events, you're really good on nodes, and you just want to try to min-max some skills that otherwise can't level. So that'd be the will skill or the Saren skill. So we're talking about Saren now. We're a few levels away from where you are at.
Yeah, it's a small jump.
Yeah. So like the regular nodes, high priority, and then I would say after that, it's probably Eternals that you can get your hands on, because the powerfuls can also be bought with regular Mezzo, just in the regular Mezzo shop. So if you just check any merchant out, they will have powerful Rebirth Flames here for sale, and then a discount if your guild has the discount. But they're 9.5 base, 9.12 mil each. So that can get pretty expensive pretty quickly. It's almost the price of like the old red cubes, right? Was it bright? Glowing cubes, bright cubes, one of those two, whichever one is, the old red one. So that's where they would be. So, but yeah, like I said, I wouldn't really spend money on that, either on transposing or weapon. And then in endgame, when you're trying to min-max, when the star forcing is either done or you're just, waiting for the next shining star force, which is 6 months down the road. So you're just sitting on your money for a long time. So you just want to have something to do while you're waiting. But that's where you can get them. So you have meso-wise theoretically unlimited access to flames.
Okay.
So calculator clear, score clear, priorities clear for flames.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, you think so? Well, I'm here now, so make sure you know so. Ask me whatever is unclear.
So
you have an item, right? You put it into the calculator.
Hold on, wait, you gotta open the calculator.
Yeah, you get the number. You cross-match the number with the progression grid. You see if there's room for growth. If you're even remotely close to the number, you're good. If you're way off, then it might be something that you want to flame. Flame whatever is the furthest off from the number in the grid. And that's where you're going to get the best bang for your buck. As soon as it starts going over another item that you have, then you reprioritize and you start working on the other flame. Like I said, you'll just permanently or perpetually you'll just have one item whose flame is just garbage. But because every other flame is slightly moving up, right? You'll have more of a cushion to compensate for that one bad flame, so you won't feel that.
So like my gloves, for example, are terrible.
Your gloves are at 25.4. Yeah, so you could put those both into the calculator. I think if you put them both into the calculator, you'll see that your glove is actually still slightly better than your shoe, right? Because you got 5 attack, it's about 3 to 1, so that's 15. And your glove has 20, and dex is 10 to 1, so that's 25. So your flame score for your glove is actually 10 higher than your shoe. And I assume 9, 36, 15, 51, they're both lower than your CRA as well, and they're higher level equips, so they would both be higher priority to flame. Yeah. If you put it into the calculator, you'll see that.
Yeah, the flame score is like 54.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, which is lower than CRA, but a higher level, right? So that means on average, the flame spent there will give you a better return. And if you want, you can also use the flame calculator, and this will just support those numbers. So you can see like, okay, I want to flame an armor with powerful cubes, 140 to 159, so that would be CRA. So the flame score I usually use for endgame is all stat for 9, attack for 3, secondary stat 10 to 1, or 1 to 10, I guess, depending on your marks. So if you're looking for like 85, which is in the flame score calculator, for CRA stuff, on average like 266 to 400 mil, you're never going to be paying that 400 mil. It's all going to come from drops, right? So eventually you get there, but that's like 28 to 40 flames. If you're trying to get the same flame score for an armor that's Absolab, you see that costs go down quite a bit, and it's only like half the flames. That's why we aim higher there. We aim there around 95, and now you get closer to around the same number, same amount of investment, but higher flame score because higher level. Does that make it all make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
So later on in the game,
Mm-hmm.
all stats worth more than attack?
Yeah, the reason is because Star Force keeps going up, and Star Force gives you a lot of flat stat. So even though you tend to cap out on how much total percentage stat you can get from your potentials pretty quickly, right? You can get to 21, 24, 27, 30, 33. Those are all really close, those numbers. And the amount of min-maxing you can do on there is pretty narrow. But the amount of total stat you can get from leveling, from flames, from Star Force is really high, right? Because you can go from like 100, like 80 flame scores, you can potentially go up to like 120 plus. That's 50% more. So every percentage all stat is going to multiply all of those stats, because all of those stats are going to go into one pile. Not all, right? So there's also some final stats. So for example, your symbols, those don't get multiplied by all stat, because if they did, it would be terribly broken, right? You get like 13k from that. If that was multiplied by your stat, you'd have everyone would be running around with like 200k stat. So, so there's a bunch of your stats. So it goes into your stat from your stat window. Just your AP, your ability points, your flames the base stats, the star forcing stats, all of those going into one pile. Then all of your percentage stat ones go all into one pile as well, those percentages, and then they're just multiplied. So since that one pile of total stats keeps increasing, and the amount of percentage that you can get doesn't go up as much because your potential caps out pretty quickly at legendary, right? There's no like mythical and fucking eternal whatever that you can get like 14% per line or 40% per line, right? That's why that keeps scaling very well and actually goes up in scaling as you go on. If you would to use like the flame score calculator here for late game versus end game, it'll actually change the flame scores a little bit because it's adjusted for that. So weapon attack loses a little bit because the amount of weapon attack actually goes up a lot. Because in the beginning, what do you have for weapon attack? Just your weapon, right? But as you go on, you get so much weapon attack from star forcing that every single one of your equips actually becomes a mini weapon. You know, like look, my ring has 77, 68, 79, 77. My weapon has 700. That's cool, but you know, 72. Another 74, 93, 73. You add all of that up, your total weapon attack goes up a lot. So the individual weapon attack from a flame actually loses a little bit of value. But the amount of stat keeps going up in the game. So that's what the flame score also takes into account, is like how much stat will you have, how much attack will you roughly have in stages of the game, and it helps you future-proof. So you don't have to constantly keep redoing your flame for whatever is the situation you're in at that point.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just to save you money and to lessen, you know, the complication of the system, because you can get into, oh yeah, this flame, because I can look at a flame and see what this is. I know this is a tier 5 attack, probably tier 6 defense if I had to guess, tier 4 all stat, and a tier 5 required level minus. But what does that really tell you? It doesn't really tell you that much. What does the flame score tell you? That tells you how much the item can be improved within reasonable funds, and that's what you want to focus on. I probably complicated a little bit more now than I needed to, but
I think I got it.
You got it? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the other thing that usually people are confused about a little bit is familiars. How do you feel about those?
I understand the basics. Kill monsters, get cards, unlock the cards. You get
So far, so good. Yeah.
ID.
Yeah.
In fact, today I got my second ID familiar, so that's nice.
That's really good. Yeah.
Beyond that, I don't know how they work.
So very solid foundations. You know, kill monster, get card. That's actually really, that's a good start. Like you said, basically IEDs where everything's at. So for familiars, you know, shock. I also have a command, but that's basically where you start, right? You reveal the cards, look for IED, maybe a little bit for drop rate. So there's small drop rate in common cards, and there's increases drop rate in rare cards. So small is 30%. The regular without any prefixes is 50%. That's already significant, right? That's basically like having a Legion drop coupon on at all times. So that is already pretty good value. Think about getting, you know, equip backups. Think about items from quests that you can just complete faster. You know, that's good value. But yeah, beyond that, when it comes to getting epics, there's a few ways. Either you buy booster packs, which is expensive, time-consuming, and RNG. Or, well, surprise, surprise, the other system is also RNG. Or you do fusion. But for fusion, you need a lot of cards that are the same monster. So in the beginning, you're going to be training in a lot of areas. You're going to be training a lot of characters. You're going to get a lot of different cards. So just reveal them on the characters that need those outcomes, that IED and that little bit of drop rate. And if it doesn't get that, you can like dust them for coins. You can either use the coins for energy to extend the duration of your familiars, or kind of like to refresh the duration. Or you can, you know, if you have a lot, you can do booster packs. But typically, you're not going to get to that point because it's 2,000. So that's like 200 familiars worth for one booster pack that comes with 3 cards, with like a small chance for rare, you know. So once you really start training in an area, so that's the earliest is Morass, and have drop rate. So that will be Morass or Sphera, or Moonbridge is typically when people start training in a certain area for a long time. You have a lot of the same cards. You need to do 2 things. One is you need to level up the card to level 5, which is max level, by having it summoned while you're killing monsters around your level. And the second thing is you need to fill up the fusion bar. And you do that by getting other cards that are the same card, right? The same monster, and to go into fusion and adding it up. So I have right here, do I have any that have a little bit of fusion bar filled? Probably.
I'm going to assume that because everything's RNG, that if you upgrade a familiar, you lose the stat that's on it.
Yes, it's a complete reroll as if you tiered up with a cube. You get a free reroll. So don't tier up anything that you want to hold the card on, yeah. And then the second thing is tiering up from, and that's all in here as well, but like tiering up from rare to, so you want to make epics, so you never start with a common one, rare, right? Because rares drop at a decent rate as well, so always start with a rare one. And then you'll need 100 points, so basically you'll have the same monster visible here. You can click select all, and then click fuse, and it'll get turned in here. And then depending on how many you've put in here, the bar will move. So the bar will need to be all the way on the right. And the card, if you hover over it, will need to say level 5. And then the rank up button will be clickable. So if it's rare to epic, it's 80% chance to work. And if it's epic to unique, you'll see that it goes up, instead of 100 to epic, it'll go up to 150. And it only has 40% chance to work. There are different outs, different types of lines. So essentially, once you get into one of those areas, you want to make as many epics as possible and look for increases drop rate by a large amount, because that's 100% drop rate, right? And that's going to give you way more cards and more nodes, symbols, all that stuff. Once you have that one, then you can start making uniques. And then that's basically just Hail Marys all the way. Looking for high percentage of IED, drop rate, high healing, right? On bosses like Varus Hilla, Hardwill, you know, it'll be really, really convenient to have those. But there's a lot of outs, but even more shitty lines. And then all of the details, all of the possible lines, weight on the lines, which familiar badges you want to go for to unlock more slots, which ones are easier to get. All of that information is on the bottom here on the familiar command.
Good shit.
Okay. Anything I skipped over there, or anything you can think of?
So like for now, like that I have 2 ID familiars, like I'm good for a little bit.
Yeah, I would
at least as fair.
Most what I would do is reveal the rares to see if you can get increased item drop rate, and the commons I'll probably move to any characters that you think you might want to make into a boss mule in the future, just to reveal there to see if you can get some ID there as well. Because the value it'll get on your main character is very low, as long as you have enough for like 1 or 2 energies, but you're not playing that much, right? You can summon your familiars probably for about 2 hours. So it doesn't seem like you're going to be playing that much, and definitely not way more. So you don't really need that much energy to be able to extend the duration. So I would already start looking at how can these cards value my entire account. If they can get extra ID on a boss mule or a future boss mule, you can get their base ID up earlier on, which means you have to do less funding later on to be able to kill the monsters. You combine that with the knowledge that you get from the bosses with your main character, and you'll be able to kill earlier and start making money on them faster. So that way you can, get more value out of them, I would say. Yeah, and until you're going into Moonbridge and you're training hours and hours in the same map and grinding, which might take a while, until then you don't really have much to worry about, yeah. Yeah, Rib Dom Pendant, I saw that. You forgot to safeguard one. Yeah, you take any risk in this game.
That was before I knew how star forcing worked. I just was clicking the button over and over again.
Well, now you know.
Then it happened. I was like, wait, what happened?
Yeah, where item go? Why can't I equip it? Yeah.
And then I got that Dom Pendant like the very first time I cleared Arcarium, then I haven't gotten it since.
Yeah, and then you realize, but how do you know? You get it on your first clear. You're like, oh, that's a pretty common drop, and then 200
clears later, and where's
and then you don't have a single one. Yeah, some lessons learned like that, but there's no manual that comes with those items. Like, hey, this is a super rare item. Treat it with treat it with care. So I just hoard, in case something becomes relevant in the future, and then hopefully I have a lot of it, and then I can go to town. But yeah,
that's why most of my stuff is also at 12 stars, because I'm like no more.
12 is
now that's the maximum.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's another thing. Are you familiar with Transfer Hammer and the value of that?
Yeah, like you get to like 17 stars and you transfer it over at 16, and
yeah. So, but like the concept, if you had to reduce it to a concept, if you hear star forcing, how would you explain to like a new player? How would you explain transfer hammering? When would you use it?
When you have like. I mean, I don't really know where you would use it, but in theory, you would use it on a lower level equip that's within 10 levels of whatever what you want it to be. So you level that up because it's cheaper, and then you have more of them more likely. And then you, like, for example, like to penciler to CRA.
Mm-hmm. So if you're talking cheaper and you have more of them, what, like, the key word there is less risk, right?
Yeah.
So I would say when you use it is when your target item, so the item that you want to upgrade, is either rare or very valuable, but just probably connected with each other. And you have an item, like you said, within 10 levels lower, that is way less rare and way less valuable, and you can get more of, where you can take the risk to upgrade. That's when you want to consider transfer hammering. So in most situations where you're at now, so let's say that you had 12-star Absolute gloves and they were like legendary, because the other thing is that when you transfer hammer, you lose the potential tier, right? The potential of the source item overwrites the potential of the target item. So you have, like, you know, 11% strength, which for epic is fine, but in the grand scheme of things, you know, getting back to epic or getting over to unique later, that's going to be relatively cheap in the grand scheme of things, right? So you're not losing a whole lot if you were to overwrite that. But you were to lose a whole lot if you have to do the weeklies a whole bunch of times, the dailies a whole bunch of times. If you have to potentially boom this and transfer this, that would be bad, right? So you would be in a situation now where it'd be really good for you to start looking for level 150 equips of the same type and gather a bunch of those so that when an event comes around, you can upgrade those, run the risk on those, relatively low risk. Like you said, get it to high star force, potentially like at least to 16, maybe higher. But probably to 16, then transfer it over, and then have 15-star Absolab stuff. So typically the ideal spot is to do, well, the safest, the cheapest is to get it to 15, so like a level 150 pieces during a 30% off, because then you just save more money up to 15 than you do during any other event, outside of a shining event, of course. And then once it's 15, you sit on it, wait for a 5, 10, 15, because then you can do 15 to 16 guaranteed, right? Then at 16, you transfer. It goes back down to 15, but hey, what do you know? It's a 5, 10, 15 event still, so you can get up to 16 for free again, right? So you get to take a double dip there. And then all you have to do is safeguard that last star 16 to 17, and you have 17-star Abso. That's like the cheapest way of doing it. Now, the next event we already know is a 5, 10, 15. So if you can get your hands on any level 150 pieces before then, you can upgrade them at that time, and then again, once you get into 16, transfer 16 again on the Abso, and then if you have money left, you can try to safeguard 16 and 17. If not, just sit on 16 on Abso, that's fine too. That's going to be a big upgrade compared to the 12 where you're at now.
Where can I get 150 stuff?
That's a good question. So I have ! transfer hammer command with a video with a lot of information. In the past, we could get a lot of free stuff from Madman Ramaru. He would drop the Sengoku stuff, level 150 gears. He only drops gears for your class now, which has severely reduced the things that he's dropped, sadly. Because you could also transfer like a mage glove that's level 150 into a warrior glove that's level 160, for example. Like, it doesn't check the class, it checks the type of equip that it is. The ones that are more easily available now, are the ones in, for example, the Rudibus shop and the shop at the Magnus Castle. So at the Rudibus shop, for example, you can buy the shoes and the shoulders, and I think the cape now, for the coins that you get from Rudibus and from Chaos Rudibus. If you talk to Oko, the Traveler here. So he has the antique gear. Oh no, it's just the shoes and the shoulder here, and the other ones might be at the other shop. So these are level 150, and the great things about these is that you can buy them with coins, which means they don't have to stink up your inventory with all the other stuff. You can just keep them as coins, and then at the day of the event, then you buy them, buy as many as you need, and once you get your thing, then you sell whatever is left or whatever, and it only takes up one slot in your inventory, right? As you get a trace, throw it into the next one, keep going if it booms, right? So that's really cool about these. And then the other shop is in Grandis, right in front of the castle, right here, the Black Market. And then you talk to Mayala, I believe, under special. Yeah, and here they have the gloves, the antique gloves. These are level 150 gloves. And here is the cape, but the cape is just level 100 because... yeah, there was no level 100 cape or something other than a really rare one you could craft. Because that's the other thing that Transfer Hammer is really good for. If you have something that has 3 lines of potential or something that has epic potential, all you have to do is give it 1 star, transfer it to the next one, give it 1 star, transfer it to the next one, and essentially what you have is like 100% 3-line epic potential scroll. And all it costs you is a few transfers. So you just have to go to an area where that level of equip drops and just transfer it over. And that's how, especially early on in the game, you can create a lot of value with very little.
Is it worth it? I don't know how much money it saves because I haven't gone to that much yet. But is it worth it to get to like to get Pensalier first, and then into the ancient route, and then into Absolab? Will that save me like a same amount of money, or?
So it's always the fewer steps you have to do, the better, right? Because the only every step you do technically costs you more money, but the reason why you're trying to why it costs you, where you're okay with it costing you more money, is because you lose risk, right? And that risk is worth you to a certain amount. With so if you were to not not safeguard your Absolab and you try to get it to 17, that would be cheaper than if you would not safeguard the 15 star and then transfer hammer it over. That would be cheaper, but you would need to get more Absolab stuff, right? So if you compare it to safeguarding your Absolab, you save about 400 to 500 mil per piece by transfer hammering over instead, because you don't have to safeguard on the lower piece. So that's the difference in the safeguarding cost, and that's only up till Savior as well, right? Because they're changing how the costs work up to 15. They're going to eliminate boom, but they're going to increase basically by the safeguard costs pretty much. So, and they're going to eliminate drop as well. So you're going to be a little bit cheaper off than safeguarding, but way more expensive off than transfer hammering over.
But at least you don't risk booming it. So there's that.
Yeah, but so that's 400 to 500 mil a piece. You know, it's typically 5 pieces for Absolab, so that's 2 to 2.5 bill. That's 2 to 2.5 bill you can spend on maybe a little bit on flames, but mostly on the potential instead to get some really nice potentials, right?
Yeah, true.
So, and in the beginning, your resources are rather limited, so I would advise to do that. So we know next Sunday we have a 5, 10, 15 coming up. So it'd be a good idea to start looking at 150s, looking at the resources, look how many coins you have. Definitely, I would say probably Madman Ramaru, put that one on the menu at least for the coming week. See if you can get some level 150 pieces there, and then maybe you can make some nice jumps there. Because if you go from 12 to 16, remember, past 15 is when the weapon attack starts coming in on Star Force, right? Very first star already is, I think, is 8. Yeah, 8 attack, then 9 attack, so like 17 is already plus 17 weapon attack. 5 pieces, that's 85 weapon attack. That's already pretty significant, right? That's when the snowball starts rolling.
On that topic, why is 22 star like the place to be? Like, why not go up to 25? And why that number?
So, well, I can show you with a mathematical example. So I have a 21 star item here. Can you see, or is that too small, by the way, on stream?
I can see.
Yeah. So I have a 21 star item here. If I would get that from 21 to 22, that gives me 11 all stat. It gives me 16 weapon and magic attack. I see it has a 30% chance of succeeding, 63% chance of just dropping, and then 7% chance of booming. Which is, of course, not ideal, but there is a chance. If I were to take a 22 star item that I have, so now it gives 17 attack, but it doesn't give any stat anymore. So the relative value from the star already goes down. That's one thing. And then second thing is that the success chance went down to 3%. Chance to drop is 77.6, and the chance of item destruction is 19.4.
Wow, that's a big difference.
Yeah, and 23.4 to 24, again, it goes up 2 attack, but then it goes down to 2%, and 24 to 25 goes down to 1%. So that's why 22 is such a wall, because it's just... Yeah, you'll see a few 23 star items here and there, and I think a 24 star item exists, but I think mathematically, if you don't safeguard, the mathematical average amount of booms to get to 25 stars is something like 2 million. So that's like that's...
The average amount of booms is like 2 million.
Around there, yeah. So that's why, yeah. That's... If you have enough people doing it, eventually one person will get it, right? But it just mathematically doesn't make any sense. It makes more sense to like mass black cube your accessories, to go for double prime line, for example. To go like 12, 12, 9, 13, 13, 10. Those are more of the things that people will be doing. like double prime line. People will double prime line their secondaries, for example, which is like 1.1, 1.2 trill average cost, I think. People will even try to go for like double or triple critical damage on their gloves, which is, I think it's like 4 trill on black cubes or something.
But the big difference there is that you
3 to
don't
4
just losing your equipment.
Yeah, and then you have black cubes that you can always fall back on the previous line. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you look at backups like for CRA, I mean, you know, I've got some backups. I've got like 600, 700 backups here. But even with 700 backups, I might get a 23. But again, there's so many other things I could be doing that just pound for pound give a way better upgrade, right? So if you're ever wondering about that, you can check !Starforce, and that will link to the Starforce calculator. And you can always just throw it in there and be like, why do people not do that? You know, like 20. If you just put in 23 on a level 150, let's say no safeguard, no star catch on a CRA hat, even during 5 to 15 and 30% off. So during a shining, the average cost, it's going to take a while because 22 is decently calculable. 23, so it's somewhere between 109 to 151 bill. With an outlier of 900 bill and the unlucky guy with 855 booms. You know, that's the
Jesus.
95% chance within 356 booms, but you know, see the on the top 5%. 95 chance within 500 bill. And if I change this to 24, then now we're going to be waiting probably for a few minutes for the for the calculator to try to go through, because now he suddenly has to do 1,000 attempts with, you know, 2%, so now he has to do 50 times that amount of calculations, basically. So probably this is going to take about 50 times, yeah. Now he's basically stuck. So yeah, that's why, you know, if the calculator, if the robot has problems calculating the odds, yeah, you probably don't do it, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So that's where that comes from. Yeah, but I totally understand people yell like 22 or like, no, 22 is the cap in that sense. You can do all the content in the game realistically with 21 star stuff. And if you have a combination of 20 and 21 star stuff with parties, you can do vastly most of the content in the game. So never feel pressure to go for 22. Always just make whatever upgrade is the lowest risk to use. Where do you have the most backups? Where do you get the most bang for your buck? Throw it into a calculator, look at the numbers, and once you have the numbers, then make your decision. Always also don't just look at the cost, right? Look at the expected booms as well, right? Look at, is transfer hammering an option? Do I have a lot of backups? Do you have a lot of backups? Cool, then it's low risk. Do you have no backups? Then it's high risk, right? Even 3% chance to boom now becomes a risk, because a wise man once said, if it's not 0%, it's 50%, right?
Yeah, straight up.
Yep. All right. Any systems, anything you can think of? Transfer hammering makes sense. Why to go for the pieces? Which pieces to go for?
Yeah.
Okay. Not convinced on that. Yeah.
What level is the? Actually, better question.
Yeah.
When do you go for Golux stuff? The equips.
So I would say start
Obviously
running
you do the coins every day, but.
Yeah, so for the dailies here, I've got Golux, and then I've got the difficulties here. So I've got easy, normal, hard, hell on when I would start trying the difficulties. Again, if you're just starting out, your level is kind of inflated because of the event. Might be a little bit later. But basically, as soon as you have enough coins to buy one of the pieces, you can buy one of the pieces that you need. So it would be the ring and the pendant, right, that you need to buy with coins that cannot drop, but the belt and the earring could drop. So you usually keep those two last to buy, because hopefully you get the drops by the time you can afford the other two pieces. It'll depend on which pieces you already have, whether you invest into them, because the Golux pieces by themselves are actually not that great, right? They don't have flame advantage. Their set bonus doesn't really come in until 3 or 4 pieces, so you'll probably be relying on at least 1 drop, most likely 2. The pieces you're replacing, if you already have pieces everywhere individually, are quite strong. So, what do you have? Event rings. You have a Silver Blossom ring with a high set. You have a kind of treasure ring that already has 30% stat. Like, in order to improve on these, you'll need to at least 17 start them, probably 18 or 19. So the amount of upfront investment for them to come online is too high. So you can buy them as soon as you can afford them, but you probably won't invest into them until you can afford, until you have all 4, and then you can make the full switch. So basically, the idea is that you have the combination of boss accessory set, event items, and maybe some Sengoku stuff, right? Like the kind of treasure, maybe the shoulders. Some people do that. Once Abzo comes in, that kind of treasure set basically falls apart to just the ring, right? The shoulders go away, the belt probably goes away. And then you start moving into Superior Golok stuff and Sweetwater around the same time. So that's why it's okay to do Commerci for a while and do Goloks for a while, so that once you can afford all of these pieces, they completely basically replace your existing boss accessory set stuff. And that's why it's okay for your boss accessory set stuff to directly become basically drop and meso gear, so that you can get used to how weak that is, quote unquote, and learn to take your damage from your other things. So take damage from the combination of stat, take damage from your ID, take damage from your Legion level, take damage from your weapon flame, take damage from your arcane power, from your boost nodes. That's where you want all your damage to come from, not from your accessories. Your accessories you want there for the utility, so for the drop rate and for the meso obtain, so that you can increase your money, get to upgrading the other stuff faster, and so you can increase your backups, so you can rely on star forcing faster and not have to rely on potentials as much, right? You want to take more risk on star forcing. You can only do that when you have backups. You can only get backups when you have drop rate, so you want to work on drop rate. So that's how you work it back. And then once...
Yeah, I think my short-term goal is definitely to get like drop rate gear.
Yeah,
it's
so
like
you want to be strong
priority.
enough. You want to be strong enough with the drop rate gear to kill stuff. So it depends on your money now, your income now. So mathematically, best next upgrade for you when it comes to star forcing would be have those level 150 pieces, have CRA pieces, get everything to 15 during a 30% off. Then once you have all of that, sit on that until the next 5, 10, 15, get it all up to 16, transfer, then safeguard up to 17 on Absolab, that kind of stuff, right? And potential-wise, the best thing would be, first of all, try to get your WSE on good stats, so weapon, secondary, and emblem. You've got a lot of IED right now. PP poo poo, yeah. But your emblem also has line of attack and 2 line of IED, so I'm more inclined to keep that one, but I would heavily re-roll the secondary, right? Because 9% all stat is nice, but not on a secondary. 9% crit is nice, but not on a secondary. And 30 IED would be nice if you needed it, but you already have 2 lines on the emblem, so that's also not nice. So basically, all of these are throwaway lines, and almost every other outcome would be a lot better here. So any combination of boss and attack will give you an insane damage increase on the secondary, because the weapon cannot be re-rolled at this time. So potential-wise, I would try to get something nice on the secondary, even if it's just 1 line attack, 1 line damage, something like that, or hopefully 2 lines attack. That will give you the boost and damage that you need from your WSE to make sure that you can roll out of stat on your accessories. And then, like you said, work on the accessories. Try to work on drop rate and meso. So for that, you can check !drop rate. And that basically talks about how does drop rate work, how does it all stack, which part, where does it come from, the familiars, the lines, what do they mean, what do you aim for? This is basically your main thing, right? You're trying to go for 4 lines of item drop rate, 5 lines of meso, because you have 9 accessories that can get lines. Why do we go for the lines that we do? This is going to help you make a lot more money, get a lot more drops. And that's going to be, again, it's going to be a big initial investment, but this is going to be your foundation that helps you elevate your whole account. So it might be that probably this 5, 10, 15 is a little bit unfortunately timed for you, and you probably won't directly be able to take advantage of it this much at this time. So yeah, probably make more sense. Get a good line on your secondary, start working on your accessories, try to go for this. Keep in mind getting those level 150 gears. And then a 30% off will allow you to get up to 15 to really prepare yourself for the next 5, 10, 15 or Shining, whichever one will come first, and then make some huge gains in jumping the 17 star and getting a lot stronger on everything.
Would it be technically less worth it for me to go for meso lines because most of my money comes from boss crystals?
So I think most of your money comes from boss crystals because you don't have mezzolines, so it might be like the other way around. If you show me like a legion, or show me like a 6k legion, and you've got like, you know, 10 characters that are over level 210 that are all clearing like HMAG and below on a weekly basis, then I would say, yeah, just prioritize drop rate and kind of fuck all the other stuff. But the amount of money you'll get from training is still going to be substantial, especially on your first character, probably still on your second character. But after that, your boss mules will probably start coming in. Once you get like 6 to 8 boss mules, like generating steady weekly revenue, I would say, yeah, just shy away from the Mezzo Obtain. And that's mentioned here as well. It's like a 2023 update, basically, is really to start prioritizing drop rate over Mezzo Obtain once you start feeling like your bossing mules start coming in hot and start making you that money, definitely. But for first character, I would, yeah, I would do it.
Okay, yeah, because I definitely haven't been feeling like I'm getting like any money during, like, when I grind for half an hour on an XP coupon.
Yeah, but that's because all the multipliers aren't in place yet. Because the thing with Maple is that for many systems there are many multipliers, so they have to make it so that those multipliers still feel good for you to want to get. But they also have to kind of make it so that the final result isn't like you're making 1000x what you would do in the beginning. So the only way to make sure that your end fully multiplied number is somewhat balanced and to get you to play and do all of the systems is to have the early number be garbage. That's like the only way mathematically that works out, right? So your very first character that you trained, you remember how weak that character was? That's because Link skills are not all applied yet. Legion is not all applied yet. They want you to feel like you get progress out of Link skills and Legion, but they also want to make it so that if you have a full Link and Legion, that you don't just like slap one snail and become level 200. There has to be some kind of in between there, and the only way to do that is to make your first character just really weak in comparison. That's the only way for you to feel that progress. So that's why you're not making much, because you're just not. But
Yeah,
you will make a serious amount more. You'll, even as just training as an Adele, you got like your WAPs, right? Wealth acquisition potions. You've got the Legion coupons. You've got the Mezzo Inner-ability. Sometimes for people, I don't think you have a decent one right now that I don't think you want to re-roll, so that's fine. And you have the equips and everything. There's some other small things that you could extra do. But all of that multiplying with each other could very easily get you to making like sub 100 mil an hour to making you like 250 to 300 an hour. And that's when you really start just printing your money back and making that money from the accessories back. And it's good because you need time. You need time to get those Golex coins. You need time to get those Commerci dineros. You need time for an event that makes it worth buying the upgrade. And then when it does, and when you have those things, that's when you have the money, because you had time to make the money. You smash them all together with the correct approach, either star forcing or safeguarding, depending on if there's fodder or not, and then you end up with your desired result and make your big upgrade.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, 3K Legion is nice, right? You got the extra space. Where did you reorganize into? What was your priority for your Legion grid?
I mean, I can send you an updated picture.
Oh, sure, yeah, that would. Yeah, rather than you describing how you Tetris your way through this thing, yeah, for sure.
I don't have the other preset. I just pretty much use it for training, like on like the other characters as I get my Legion up. So I haven't like made like one for training, one for bossing. I just have it set up for like, I guess all purpose, but really just bossing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, there's not many places to go. Plus, I wouldn't go into bonus EXP this early. It's almost more expensive to like work your way up to bonus EXP than how much you're getting from that, because you're only getting 0.25% per block, right? So you're getting 1, 2, 3.25%. Like, that's not even gonna make sense. It makes more sense to get your kill speed up first. So just raw damage. Maybe work your way into normal damage first on your training Legion first, just to get all of that damage in. And then once you can kill the monsters all reliably and at a high speed, then you can try to increase the EXP you get from them. So this kind of goes in tandem. So whatever the priority is here that you fill the grid with is kind of the same priority you use to level up your Link skills and your Legion characters for your guild, right? So that's shown in exclamation mark links.
So, yeah, I guess it for some reason triggered in my mind that normal damage works at all levels. I thought it was like normal damage is for arcane monsters.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
I don't know why I thought that.
This is everything that's not a boss monster is a normal monster, so it'll work on all of them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's the same priority as this, right? Like, where do you get your damage from? Which character would you level first so that it helps you snowball that Legion power and that Link's skill power, right? Which are combined in this grid. And that goes into as well, how do you level up your hyper stats? That's the same priority, you know, like what does the most damage for you? Make sure that that's figured out and then move to the next thing. So you want your critical rate get to 100% first, right? Then you want your critical damage to go in. Then you want your IED to come in for bossing, and then if you have anything left, boss damage, that's where you put everything else, right? So I would assume you have 100% crit with this setup?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So then you're doing that perfectly. And then your hyper stats are used to kind of complement... where am I here? Oh yeah, complement those numbers. So that's the other thing as well. As you get to higher levels, you'll do kind of the same thing like for your Legion, have a mobbing and a bossing setup. You'll do that for your hyper stats as well. So you'll end up never having a setup where you have any points in normal monster damage and in boss damage and in IED at the same one, right? It's either IED and boss damage or normal monster damage and EXP. And by switching between those, you'll be able to make sure that whenever you're mobbing, switch everything to one, bossing, switch everything to the other one. And that will include later on.
Is there like a breakpoint for when I should make those presets?
It's basically once you start overflowing points and you're going past level 10 on like the important ones, that's probably the time where you start making different setups. Yeah. Okay. So I think you were like around at that bending point now. Like you got your critical damage, your ID, your boss damage, your regular damage all at 10. And now you're kind of like finding where to put extra points into. That's probably the point where you just click a different preset and then just start reprioritizing. Again, critical rate, get to 100, and then get the critical damage, the percentage damage, normal monster damage. Try to get all of those to like level 8 or something, and then kind of see where you're at, you know? Can you get the bonus? Like, can you kill like that? That's cool. Dump everything into bonus EXP. Can you not kill like that? Put a little bit more. Put it all into 9. See where you're at. Put a little bit... but you're going to get to the point where basically leveling anything to level like 5 or 6 is pretty much free. So if you're training, not having bonus EXP at least like 5 or 6 is kind of weird, because why would you have points in like attack power, and maybe there's some in strength up there as well, that, you know, do so little for your damage, where there's probably doesn't make a difference in kill speed when it could be making a small difference in bonus EXP.
All the points that you see are the points I have, like 0.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's good, yeah. But again, like you're probably starting to be at that breaking point. So once you get closer to 240, 245, you'll really start seeing like, do I go for 11 or 12, which starts getting really expensive, or do I get something from like level 3 to level 8 or level 9? That'll basically be the difference. So those stats will comparatively start feeling way cheaper. And that's also when, you know, different Legion blocks and a larger Legion grid will also show you like, damn, I can, you know, I have this extra block and that gives me more critical rate. I can now take all of the critical rate out of my hyperstats, or, you know, I can't level the next level in my hyperstats, and I can put like 6 or 7 levels in critical rate almost for free at no cost. That means I can move all of my blocks from critical rate in my Legion grid. I can actually move them all to normal monster damage or even to bonus EXP at like no expense, basically. So I'm just getting free EXP bonus. And that's when you can kind of start puzzling with where do you take what stat. But that'll, now it seems a little bit out there, a little bit abstract, right? Like, oh no, am I going to have to do a whole bunch of calculations for that? It'll just come naturally as things start overflowing. You just look at your critical rate and you're like, oh, I'm at 106% critical rate. Like, I don't need this much, right? Where can I take a little bit off? Ooh, probably the Legion grid, right? Maybe I can get some free boss damage, maybe some free bonus EXP, something like that. So it's just like where it starts overflowing, that's where you can start correcting.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense to me.
No. And for any of these individual things, I have videos. So like when it comes to hyperstats, Links in Legion has its own command. If you're ever wondering, like, you know, what is the next character that's going to give me a lot of value for my account, you can always check here. If you ever see any class there that you don't have yet, again, it's just like in the progression grid, you know, you see anything where you're very far off of the number here, that doesn't mean like you have to do it, but it does mean that pound for pound, you're going to get good value there. Okay, we talked about general equip progress. I didn't like. directly look at your stat window, but I didn't see anything truly egregious. The one thing that you'll probably notice, though, is that your critical damage is very low. Part of that is probably, I'm guessing you don't have the critical damage Legion blocks yet, like Shade, Hayato, Jet.
The only one of those I have is Hayato.
You have the Kinesis Link skill, and then of course critical damage on gloves. Probably go for one line once you get the legendary stuff on the glove, just because it's so good. A decent Sharp Eyes is also, that's also critical damage. So if you don't have that one buffed here, yeah, you won't see it as much. But that's the one thing Adele lacks is critical damage. So basically, if you can get your hands on that anywhere, that'll scale very well for you. Critical damage is basically final damage on critical hits. So once you have your critical rate at 100%, you're adding a whole lot of damage there. I can get into the mathematical background on it, but basically critical damage will make your damage go better. And again, it won't show up in your damage range, but you will be hitting way bigger numbers and killing monsters way faster. So that's something you definitely want to be on the lookout for.
Yeah, so like getting Phantom up so I can take like those 2 spaces off the critical rate block of Legion and put them somewhere else.
Yeah, it's not as important yet.
200.
You don't have a whole lot of room for them to go to, right? It's more once you get to like 4K, 5K, 6K, because then your Legion grid is going to look very empty.
But really, what I mean is, yeah, but like also getting the 210 link for Phantom, and then getting the Legion block upgraded for Hayato, and getting the Kinesis link skill, like those things would help. Yeah,
looking at critical damage, I'd say the biggest value for the Legion block and the extra critical rate for your Phantom is not necessarily for this character, but the other thing that this is made in mind with, and why Phantom is so high up, is it because you can link it to any other character you're training, and they can all get more critical rate, and most characters struggle with critical rate very early on, so you can increase all of their base damage because all of their critical damage starts applying, which means you can level them faster, which means you can get to a bigger Legion faster, get your link skills faster, and just the whole system is going to build up faster. It's just one of your most foundational building blocks to any character is critical rate, so it's going to give you value to your entire account whenever you switch it to that. That's why it's so high up. Some characters will just, if you're trying to do a Demon Avenger or something, like the base critical rate is garbage, The ID is insanely high, but the critical rate is non-existent. So it needs that Phantom early on to be able to commit its damage and to keep that level speed high. And then now you have, normal monster damage link, right? And that's why the Phantom is that high, but the Demon Avenger is also decently high here, because now you get 5, 10, 15% damage to all monsters. Right, so it's not normal monster; it's just like any, right? Just damage. So it's like, damn. Now you have that one for all the other characters. So the next character is going to stay one-shotting just a little bit longer, right? A little bit faster leveling speed, higher leveling speed. And now the next character comes in, does that same effect, not as effective, but also does a similar effect. And now that snowball keeps rolling, right? And now every next character you make is just going to level so much faster than the previous one, and you're just going to be shitting out Legion levels, right? Just power in numbers. You've got 21 more characters whose Legion level will count. If you get 21 more level 100s, 2.1k extra, you're over 5k, right? It's just power in numbers.
That's like it's hard to like do I focus on this? There's like so many different things you could do on your account. It feels like right now the easiest way to get a lot of power is leveling up characters for Legion.
Yeah, I would say just do what you enjoy. Some people just really like their main character and they want to grind on it. Like, definitely grind on a character if you feel like doing it. And as soon as you start feeling a little bit like, I'm not feeling the return as much, I feel like I'm investing a lot of time, but I'm not getting that much back for it, then just wean off a little bit and work a little bit more on Legion and just balance that out a little bit more. And just as long as you're not losing track of the progression grid on where you roughly want to be, as long as you've got like one eye looking to the side, kind of keeping this in mind, then you're totally golden, Don't do 100% one thing and 0% another thing. Always do like a little bit of the thing so you keep your progress, you keep that high efficiency, high value, you're taking advantage of that, but you're mostly doing what's fun for you, right?
Also, when you're grinding characters, number go up, so it just feels nicer than sitting in a map for 45 minutes and nothing happens.
Yep. Yeah. For some people, just knowing that it's going to go up or knowing that they're going to be number 1 or something, that's the You know,
Yeah,
that's
true.
all the motivation they need. But for other people, that can only go so far. You need something a bit more tangible. So that's also totally reasonable.
Like right now I feel like I hate grinding on the Adele because it just feels like the levels just take so freaking long, and then like some people will grind on a map for a month straight to get one level, and it's like, damn, dude.
Yep. But one of the reasons why it's going slow is because you've leveled too quickly, so you're not as strong as you could be around your level, right? So some other metrics have to catch up. And the other thing is that there's a bunch of systems, just like there are systems for meso obtain, and just like there are systems for damage. There are also systems for EXP you don't have fully explored yet, right? We probably don't have experience accumulation potions on all the time. You don't have Legion coupons or any kind of 2x at all time. You probably don't have MVP buffs at all time, right? And again, the game has to balance out for when those things are there, that there's still a reasonable leveling speed. But if you don't have any of those, you're basically just dependent on the level of burn in your map and how well you rotate the map and your kill speed. That's it. So once you start taking into account all of those other factors as well, and your Legion is decently built up, you can spare coins for Legion coupons. Once you're going to start making experience accumulation potions, once you start compounding those, maybe the gold potions from Monster Park, right? That's why those dailies are mentioned here. Like, why is Monster Park still important at level 260 because of those coupons, right? If you can keep those coupons on, once you get a decent amount, now you can start using those coupons at all times on all of your mules. Now they can all start leveling a little bit faster, right? It's just all compounding. And when you have a lot of factors compounding on each other, once you're in the build-up phase of that, it just means that everything is going to feel relatively slow because there's so much room for growth. Lost me at reasonable leveling speed. Reasonable so that the designers can keep up making content. Because we already have a guy now at 295 and the highest content out is 275. So I think you're right. I think this leveling speed is still unreasonable. I think it's still too fast. Even though it's taking someone months. But they're probably training about 18 hours a day, so they're going to be overperforming. I don't know if you saw, but someone leveled to 295 yesterday.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Isn't that like because of how exponential XP works? He's like a third of the way or something?
Yeah, he's a third of the way of the total EXP, and I think he needs about a quadrillion EXP now for the next level.
And like the maps aren't at his level, so he's getting like technically reduced XP.
They did take that away past, I believe, level 287 or something, to not discourage people from grinding into the ether. They did make it so that you don't get penalty as long as you're training on like the highest level monsters. You don't get penalty. Yeah, because otherwise you basically put a stop on people who want to grind, and you want those people to grind because they motivate other people to do it at lowest efficiency, right? So you want people to be draining all of their time into the game without barely having to give them anything back for it. Those are the best players you want in your game, so you want to motivate those, so you have to keep them, carrot on a stick, basically. Yeah. All right. I think we're over everything. Can't really think of anything we haven't touched on. If you can think of any last thing, let me know. Otherwise, I have to kick you out. No, I just have to wish you a good luck and good hunting on all of that, and good fortune on the cubing, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't have any more questions. I think you've pretty much answered all the insecurities that I've had up until now.
All right, good. Yeah, if anything else comes up, just you can reach out on Discord if it's complicated, but otherwise, you can just ask in chat and we'll just go over it. I'll upload this probably later today, so you can look back as well at another time if you need to fall back on anything. But yeah, use the commands, use the people in the chat that are there. They know a lot, and they probably heard my answer a few times already. But I'll do my best to help you out. And yeah, just wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, you're welcome.
And good luck to you too.
Thank you. I hope hopefully some some good stuff, some drops maybe, because now I'm in pitched hell, which is this is why I tell people to do Commerci, because you don't want to be at that point of the game where you're just waiting for that RNG drop, because trust me, it's not fun. You have no control. So as long as you could have some form of control, please take that. So you can.
Wouldn't be so bad if you could grind the bosses more than once a week too.
Yeah, or
like
you have
could
some
do them
kind
over and over again.
some kind of coins, or but yeah, then some people would just run it like 5 times a day. I don't know. Yeah, it's a there's got to be better systems than this, but we don't have one. So you know, you have to just
True.
burn a candle in the RNGesus shrine every day, and you know, say your prayers. That's
Alrighty.
that's all we
Thank
do.
you very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
Good luck, and I'll see you around.
Have a good one.
Okay, bye-bye. All right. Hopefully that was informational and educational and gave you guys some insight if you were in a similar or a completely different situation. If you heard anything that you think could be fine-tuned or something that you think I said wrong or you have additional questions, please leave a comment or find me live over at Twitch. I stream every day, twitch.tv/Scardor. Find me there and you can be live for these coaching sessions and you can ask me anything you want. You can use these commands as well. And by just using ! And then whatever you're looking for, or ! Commands has a link to all the commands. Try to keep these all up to date. I like these more than I like YouTube videos because I can directly edit them, and YouTube videos are floating out there on the YouTubes, and sometimes advice can be outdated in a week, and sometimes it's good for 3 years, and it's hard to know when you're watching a video whether it's actually still accurate. So, if you like this coaching session, if you want one of these as well, check the description of the video or use ! Coaching over on Twitch. And if you'd like to win one of these sessions for free, make sure you leave a comment that you would like to win with your Discord name, and I will reach out to you possibly next month. At the end of every month, I draw 2 winners from all of the people who replied on these videos. So try your luck. Other than that, I wish you guys a good day. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next video or over at Twitch. Thanks.